On the day before Thanksgiving, 1971, the sky over the Pacific Northwest was a tapestry of gray. A cold, steady rain was falling, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes the world feel quiet and introspective. At Portland International Airport, people were rushing to get home for the holiday. Families embracing, business travelers looking tired, a sense of hurried anticipation in the air. Amidst this very ordinary scene, a man walked up to the counter for Northwest Orient Airlines. He was in his mid-40s, dressed in a dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and a black tie. He looked respectable, unremarkable even. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle, a short 30-minute flight. He paid in cash and gave his name as Dan Cooper. He was assigned seat 18C. He boarded the Boeing 727, took his seat, lit a cigarette, and ordered a bourbon and soda. Nothing about him suggested he was about to step out of the ordinary world and into American legend. This is the story of a hijacking, yes, but it's more than that. It's a story about a ghost, about a man who, for a few terrifying hours, held the lives of 42 people in his hands, and then, with the precision of a phantom, simply vanished. He didn't just escape, he dissolved into the night, leaving behind a mystery that, more than 50 years later, continues to haunt us. Because the real question isn't just who he was, but how someone could so completely disappear from the face of the earth. Flight 305 took off on time, just before 3 in the afternoon. As the plane climbed through the thick, churning clouds, Cooper handed a note to a young flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. Most flight attendants are used to getting unwanted attention, phone numbers scribbled on napkins. She assumed it was just that, and slipped the note unread into her purse. He leaned closer. "Miss," he said gently, "you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence's world must have stopped in that moment. The hum of the engines, the chatter of passengers, all of it fading into a dull roar. The note was written in neat, all-capital letters. It was direct and terrifyingly calm. He wanted her to sit with him. She did. He opened his briefcase just enough for her to see a mess of wires and red sticks. He told her his demands. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and he wanted them waiting for him when they landed in Seattle. This is what makes the story so chilling, so cinematic. Cooper wasn't violent. He wasn't erratic. The crew would later describe him as polite, even thoughtful. He paid for his drink. He even tried to give the flight attendant the change. When their meals were served, he ordered a second bourbon. He was, by all accounts, the calmest person on that plane. It wasn't the frantic act of a desperate man. It was a plan, executed with unnerving precision. He was a silent passenger, controlling everything with just a few quiet words. The president of Northwest Orient Airlines authorized the ransom payment. On the ground, the FBI scrambled. They gathered the money, 10,000 individual $20 bills. They photographed every single one. They rushed to find the parachutes. Meanwhile, the plane circled high above Puget Sound for 2 hours, burning fuel, a silver capsule full of fear and uncertainty, invisible to the world below. Cooper was patient. He just sat there smoking his cigarettes, looking out the window into the darkening sky. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, it was directed to a remote, brightly lit section of the tarmac. The shades on the plane were drawn, at Cooper's command, to keep snipers away. A single airline employee approached the aircraft and exchanged the bag of money and the parachutes for the 36 passengers. They walked off the plane into the cold, rainy night, their holiday plans shattered, their lives forever marked by the quiet man in seat 18C. They had no idea they were walking away from a legend being born. Only the flight crew and Cooper remained. He outlined the next stage of his plan. He wanted them to fly to Mexico City. He specified the route, the altitude, no higher than 10,000 feet, and the speed. He wanted the landing gear to remain down and the wing flaps at 15 degrees. These weren't random requests. An experienced pilot or skydiver would know that these conditions would slow the plane down and keep it at a low altitude, making a jump possible. He knew what he was doing. The plane took off again, plunging back into the stormy night. The crew was now isolated in the cockpit. Cooper was alone in the back of the passenger cabin. And then somewhere between Seattle and Reno, in the rugged, unforgiving wilderness of southwestern Washington, Dan Cooper did the impossible. He walked to the back of the plane, lowered the aft staircase, a unique feature of the 727, and with $200,000 strapped to his body, he stepped out into a freezing 200-mile-per-hour wind, into the blackness of a raging storm, 10,000 feet above the ground. And he was gone. What followed was one of the largest and most expensive manhunts in American history. For months, soldiers, FBI agents, and local police scoured the dense forests below the flight path. They searched on foot. They searched from the air. They found nothing. No parachute, no briefcase, no body, and not a single one of the 10,000 $20 bills. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. The FBI officially named the investigation NORJAK for Northwest Hijacking. They interviewed hundreds of potential suspects. They had a composite sketch, drawn from the crew's memory, a man with a receding hairline, wearing dark glasses. But the sketch could have been anyone. The name Dan Cooper was almost certainly a fake, likely inspired by a popular French-language comic book hero. He had left behind almost no physical evidence on the plane, just his black clip-on tie, a tie clasp, and 8 cigarette butts. For years, the case grew colder. It became a campfire story, a modern folktale. Who was this man? Was he an ex-paratrooper and disgruntled airline employee? A common criminal who just got lucky? Theories spiraled. Some said he died in the jump, his body lost forever in the vast wilderness. Others believed he survived and was living a quiet life somewhere, the ultimate master of his own fate. He became a kind of anti-hero, a symbol of rebellion against the system, a man who took on the government and won. And then, in 1980, nearly a decade after he vanished, a little boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand on the banks of the Columbia River. He was on a family vacation, and there, buried just inches beneath the surface, he found something incredible: 3 rotting bundles of cash. When his family took it to the police, the FBI confirmed the impossible. The serial numbers matched the ransom money given to D.B. Cooper. It was just under $6,000. But this discovery, instead of solving the mystery, only deepened it. The money was found miles from the projected drop zone. How did it get there? Did Cooper lose some of the money during the jump? Did he bury it there, intending to come back for it later? And if so, where was the rest? The discovery only added another layer to the enigma. It was a clue that led nowhere. For decades, the FBI kept the case open. New technologies allowed them to analyze the DNA from the tie he left behind, but it never matched anyone in their database. They examined the particles on the tie, finding traces of rare earth elements, suggesting he may have worked in a very specific kind of chemical or manufacturing plant. But it was just another breadcrumb on a trail that had long gone cold. Finally, in 2016, 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI announced they were officially suspending the active investigation. They had chased a ghost for as long as they could. So what are we left with? We are left with the story of a man who was so ordinary, he became extraordinary. He remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in commercial aviation history. He's a question mark that hangs forever in the American sky. Maybe he died that night. His body returned to the earth in some lonely, forgotten corner of the forest. Or maybe, just maybe, he survived. Maybe he watched the news reports of the massive search for him, a quiet smile on his face. Maybe he grew old and took his secret with him to the grave. We will likely never know. And perhaps that's the point. His identity is almost secondary to what he represents. In a world where we are tracked and traced, where every move is documented, the story of D.B. Cooper reminds us that it is still possible to simply disappear, to step out of a plane and into the realm of pure mystery. The rain has long since stopped. The plane has been scrapped. The witnesses have grown old. But somewhere out there, in the howling wind over the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest, the ghost of the silent passenger still flies. And so, the story remains, a question hanging forever in the air. What do you believe happened to the man who called himself Dan Cooper? Was he a seasoned expert who pulled off the perfect crime and escaped to a new life? Or was he a desperate man whose luck finally ran out in the brutal, unforgiving wilderness? The official case may be cold, but the mystery is still very much alive. We'd love to read your thoughts. Share your theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching.